probation for over 2 years. And then along came the Ontario Federation of Labour. A planned weekend of protesting the Harris government cutbacks has threatened to interfere, but hopefully not.
Well, in terms of Woodbine and the event on the day, on Saturday the 26th, we've had repeated assurances that the event will not be disrupted or targeted in any way.
To the cheers of a crowd, here is Cigar, and he wins with a vengeance today. Cigar wins by 4.
The winner of 16 in a row before finally losing, Cigar is still the focal point of the event, even though the anticipated duel with Skipaway, who beat him in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, won't materialize.
Well, I'm kind of disappointed. I believe Cigar's the best horse, in my mind, without a doubt. Skipaway did beat me on a given day, but I was very much looking forward to a return match and vindication for Cigar.
And it's hoped the '96 Breeders' Cup will be vindication for Canadian racing. The Canadian contingent includes 3 from the successful Barb Minshall stable. She'll be challenging Cigar with Mount Sassafras.
It was a little bit of a last-minute decision to put our horse in. You know, the fact that we didn't have to ship anywhere and we're right here at Woodbine. My horse is doing, you know, Mount Sassafras, he's doing great. And, you know, we're hoping to get a little bit lucky there. He's going to be a bit of a long shot, but he's training well and he's never been far out in races. And he does like the mile and a quarter distance, which will be okay for him, too.
Minshall also has barbed wire in the juvenile fillies, but her favorite is the playful Kiradashi, entered in the mile. He's her best horse.
I guess realistically, probably, yes. I think the 2-year-old filly has a very good chance as well. But he is really in good form right now, and he likes his course, and he's a good horse, and I think he'll show himself well.
One of the best races figures to be the mile-and-a-half turf, featuring Canadian International winner Singspiel. With Sandy Hawley aboard, Mark Frostad's Chief Bearheart hopes to challenge.
Just before the race, we didn't know how good Chief Bearheart was. And we sure found out in the Canadian International that he's a top caliber horse. Got beat 3/4 of a length to Singspiel, who I think is a horse to beat in the race.
And there are other Canadians. The most notable could be Langfuhr, the sprint specialist trained by Mike Keogh. He could do well in the 6-furlong event. It all adds up to a record 10 Canadian horses.
The fact is we've got a lot of entries out of Woodbine, and I think we're going to be pretty competitive on the day.
And on that day, there'll be a special feeling one veteran jockey Bailey knows all about.
It's global. You not only have the best horses in America, but you have best horses in North America, South America's coming, Japan, Europe, and it is a champion of champions. Just because you're the best of where you came from doesn't mean you're the best in the world. And the Breeders' Cup is where you find out who is king of the hill.
Should be a fun day with the major sports all going at full throttle.
And they're off. And it is Dan Smartley who strides under the line. And here's the wire. Concern for Molly Clouds. Tarazi runs right by him. Here indeed is a superstar. And he will go on to be a champion. Oh, what a tragedy. As Go for One has fallen at the 16th hole. Here is our king to win it. And an absolute shocker. He's 99 to 1. And here he is, the incomparable, invincible, unbeatable Cigar.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Sports Desk special, Breeders' Cup 96 at the Post. I'm Rod Smith. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll try our best to separate the contenders from the pretenders for Saturday's championship day at Woodbine. There are 7 races with a combined purse of $11 million U.S. Joining me will be Perry Lefko, a longtime thoroughbred writer with the Toronto Sun and author of The Greatest Show on Turf, A History of the Breeders' Cup. We'll also have a profile of the great Cigar, the champion colt who tied Citation's record of 16 consecutive wins earlier this year and who's come to Toronto to end his brilliant career on a winning note. Perry Lefko, welcome. Breeders' Cup, out of the United States for the first time in its 13-year history, and here in Canada. How big is this for Canadian racing?
This is huge in Canadian racing. I mean, this is the greatest show on turf. It's the Super Bowl of racing. There's never been anything like it before in Canadian racing, and there never, ever will be anything like it before. This is Canada's chance to show the world what its racing is all about.
Okay, Perry, let's get to it. The first race of the day will be the Juvenile Fillies. This one has always favored the horses, really most of them that come off the pace. Do you think that trend will continue?
It's hard to say. I mean, the track was favoring speed today, but you know, if history goes to form, then it will a horse be coming from off the pace. I really like a horse called Minister's Melody. She's by Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister has had 2 horses win the Juvenile Fillies already, and I look for this horse to become the 3rd horse to do it.
Well, Perry, one thing that is definitely consistent about this race, it's been dominated by a certain flamboyant trainer. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies has belonged to D. Wayne Lucas. He's won the race 3 times and on each occasion also had the runner-up. He even outdid himself in 1988 when Open Mind, Darby Shuffle, and Leah Lucinda finished 1, 2, 3. Lucas feels there is obviously strength in numbers, and he's got a 3-barrel attack again this year. Leading Team Lucas is Sharp Cat, winner of the Grade 1 Matron at Belmont. The other 2 white bridles in the race will be worn by the Overbrook Farm entry of Cheyenne City and City Band, both coming off lopsided wins in their last starts. Lucas's biggest rival, Nick Zito, is bringing a tag team of his own. Storm Song and Love That Jazz both have the credentials to keep Lucas off the board. In fact, Storm Song beat Sharp Cat in the Frizette on Breeders' Cup Preview Day at Belmont. Many experts are high on closer Minister's Melody. She'll be a nice price at 8 to 1 in the morning line. A pair of Canadians are among the 5 other challengers. Roger Atfield's Lark Whistle is a long shot at 20 to 1 from post 7. While a lot of people are looking for Barb Minchell's Barbed Wire to run a big race on her home track, especially Barb Minchell herself.
Right from day one, she's always trained like a real special horse. We always, you know, we're kind of excited about her because she did look like she had something extra in her and looked like a star from the beginning. And her early races were on the turf just out of circumstance of the way the race is set up. But we always knew even early on she would be a 2-turn filly. She handled the dirt. I always train on the dirt. And her last race was you know, very, very good.
She got enough tactical speed to be able to get herself where I want her, but I think the 2 horses in the race of Vito, Nick Zito's and Lucas horses, they're on the inside of me, and their races have been showing quite a bit of speed. And it's going to see how she leaves the gate, coming out of there and getting across in and holding a good position.
A pair of Canadians are in the sprint as well, including the race's 3rd choice. Owner Gustav Schickendan sends 4-year-old Langfuhr from post 12. Langfuhr looked awesome in winning the 7-furlong Vosburg, but is 0 for 2 at the Cup distance of 6 furlongs.
Hopefully, you know, being on home ground, I think that'll help us a little bit. You know, we don't have to ship, but at the same time, when we did ship him to New York both times, he ran huge. But being on home ground, so I think that helps a lot.
Plenty of speed for Langfuhr to chase in the lane. D. Wayne Lucas saddles 2 of the speedballs in the form of Honor and Glory and Lord Carson. The latter looked unbeatable in winning his last start, but will have to face the fast filly Capote Belle up front. Fillies have finished either 1st or 2nd in this race 8 of the past 10 years, and none have had the speed figures boasted by Capote Belle. The horse in the rail is hoping for the track to come up a little muddy on race day. A peeling skier wired them all, including Capote Belle, on an off track in his last start in Kentucky, and he'll be an overlay at 15 to 1 if the going is off. The faster the pace, the better the chances for Lee de Justice. Last year's 3rd place finisher will be flying along with Langfuhr late in the running. Frank Stronach's friendly lover joins Langfuhr as Canadian representatives. They'll both need racing luck to find their way to the finish line in a race that always features heavy traffic.
Big field. That's going to be Langfuhr's problem, trying to negotiate his way through that field without losing too much ground on a flying turn.
7 times the winner of the Vosburg has been the favorite in the sprint. At all 7 times, Perry, they have failed to win it. Langfuhr was the winner of the Vosburg, so this sounds like bad news. Do you think he can break that trend?
Statistics in horse racing, like statistics in sport, are often very accurate. This horse does not have the odds going for him in terms of that statistics. Having said that, he's on his home course, he's on top of his game, he's fresh, he's working well, and hopefully he can come up with a big effort.
Okay, next up is the $1 million Breeders' Cup Distaff for fillies and mares 3 years old and up. This race always has the smallest field. Now it's down to 6 horses after the Canadian, mysteriously owned by Frank Stronach, was scratched with a bad ankle. Small field, but usually the most competitive, and Perry, I suppose it should be again.
This is always a very tough race. You don't have to have a big field to have a good race, and all these horses legitimately have a chance to win this race.
Well, we will continue this Sports Desk special Breeders' Cup 96 at the post in a moment, including a profile of Cigar a little later in the show. Remember the first?
Is right there on the outside, fit for a queen, brave at the rail third. Here comes Versailles Treaty, who's kicking in late, but it is Vance Smartly. She takes the lead under Pat Day's urging and pulls away here by 2. It is Versailles Treaty, but is too late and not enough, and it is Vance Smartly who strides under the line, undefeated this year, and the undisputed queen of racing on this continent.
Year. And that has been the history of the winners in the Breeders' Juvenile. We'll have more on that in a moment. But first, we'll look at the mile on turf. And Perry, you talk about the E.P. Taylor turf course at Woodbine. People have been raving about it, considering it one of the best in the world, really, certainly in North America. But contrary to what a lot of people think, this isn't the reason why Woodbine got the Breeders' Cup.
This wasn't even part of the original plan when Woodbine made its presentation to the Breeders' Cup Limited. This happened later on when Woodbine, the Ontario Jockey Club, decided to close down Greenwood, expand Woodbine, put a harness course at Woodbine. That wasn't part of the original plan either. And look what's happening now. They're having to paint the harness course green. There's a lot of things that have happened since that original presentation that weren't even there to begin with.
Now, just the same, though, the Europeans love that turf course, and they're more than glad to come. And they love the weather as well in Toronto.
Ideally, the Europeans couldn't have it better. The weather's perfect for them. The turf course is great. It's a very wide, expansive turf course. It's just the type of thing that they're used to at home. There really is no excuse for the Europeans not to do well.
Indeed, the European contingent will be well represented in the mile. Once again, Europe has sent a champion to make his mark on the mile. Mark of esteem. Sheikh Mohammed's 3-year-old colt has stolen the headlines with 3 wins and 4 starts at a mile on turf, and has the Europeans singing his praises heading to Woodbine.
One of the finest ever to come over for the Breeders' Cup. The ground is perfect, the track is perfect. Mark of Esteem will win the Breeders' Cup mile. I've got bottled 2-1 back in England. The morning line price is 8-5. Well, that's a joke. It'll be odds on. Mark of Esteem, it cannot get beaten. That is a lay down for anyone wanting a banker Breeders' Cup bet. Mark of Esteem will win.
If Mark of Esteem is to prevail on Cup Day, he'll have to hold off a cattle charge of strong American milers. Just look at the finish in this year's Kelso, with mile starters Same Old Wish and DeHaas leading a 5-horse photo at the wire. Charlie Whittingham saddles his speedy 6-year-old Gray, Urgent Request, who's coming off a crusher in the Oak Tree Mile at Santa Anita. As for Canada, once again it's Barb Minchell who's asked to carry the flag, this time with 4-year-old Kiradashi. The 1995 Prince of Wales champion loves Woodbine and loves the turf if his 6-length triumph in the Heresy Stakes is any indication. According to Minchell, he's ready.
He's really just been doing so well in the last month and a half. I mean, he's had a really good year all year, but he's really kind of re-peaking to a really big effort. I mean, his last effort was big, and he's strong and in great physical shape and mental shape, and I feel like he's going to run big.
Jerry Bailey is always a factor at the Breeders' Cup, and he'll be aboard 8-1 shot Memories of Silver in the mile. Fast filly Chiposa Springs opted for the mile instead of the sprint. Craig Perrette will try to keep her unbeaten on the turf. Spinning World has been chasing Mark of Esteem all over Europe this season, and now chases him over here. And for those who like 2 horses for the price of 1, the Mutual field has some decent credentials. Mighty Forum and Dumani have combined for 13 wins on the grass. Although no juvenile champion has ever won the Kentucky Derby, this 2-year-old showcase always seems to give us the early favorite for the following season's Triple Crown. Ordway may be that horse, especially after his win in the Champagne on Cup Preview Day.
I think there's a lot more fuel left in the tank, and, you know, we're only looking to probably run him once more this year, and, you know, look for a campaign next year, but I guess he's got a pretty good shot.
His main competition will come from a Kentucky horse, Boston Harbor. He's 5 for 6 lifetime, including this win in the Keeneland Breeders' Futurity. His trainer, guess who? D. Wayne Lucas.
I thought he ran well. It was back, the thing that was significant about it, it was back very quick from the Kentucky Cup, and now we're going to have to come back again. That's going to test this little horse, but I was very pleased with the race.
If there's a colt who can beat the top two, it may be a Canadian. Frank Stronach's cash deposit is 3 for 4 at Woodbine after his 6-length cruise in the Grey Stakes. Canada's top 2-year-old has created a sense of national pride in his connection.
It's not very often you get to go to the Breeders' Cup on your home ground, and there's a lot of pride involved. We think our horses and our horsemen here are very good at what they do, and we'd like to show that we can, you know, compete.
Looking for a closer with a price? Look no further than Gunfight. He was a game 4th to Ordway in the Champagne, despite a 5-wide trip. Pat Day will have him in better position this time. Nick Zito sends acceptable from the 10-hole. He's already been to the Woodbine Winners' Circle in an allowance race in mid-September. That race over the track should prove beneficial. Now, it's only over the course of 12 years, but I do find it interesting, Perry, that no winner of the Juvenile, the Breeders' Cup, has gone on to win the Kentucky Derby the next year. Why do you suppose that is?
It's a very difficult thing to repeat. Horses get good early. That's called being precocious. Now, some of them get so good early that they aren't able to carry that on to the next year. A lot of horses who've won the Kentucky Derby, you haven't even heard of them at 2, let alone having run in the Breeders' Cup. The best example I could think of was Sunday Silence. I mean, he had not even run in the Breeders' Cup. I didn't even know who the horse was, but by the time he was a 3-year-old, everybody knew who he was.
Well, next up is the turf for 3-year-olds and up, over 1.5 miles. Sheikh Mohammed has a 4-horse entry in this race, including Swain and Shantu. Another horse to watch, Diplomatic Jet, owned by 99-year-old Fred Hooper. Another 99 is Rick's Natural Star. Unfortunately for him, those are his odds. A horse with only $6,000 in lifetime earnings, who's never raced on grass and was only entered really as a promotional stunt. The strongest part of the Sheik's entry is Canadian International winner Singspiel. Expect a wad ridden by Chris McCarron to fly down the stretch from the back of the pack. Another late runner, our Canadian hope, Chief Bearheart, ridden by Sandy Hawley and owned by Samson Farms. Barry, how do you see this Breeders' Cup turf shaping up? First of all, Chief Bearheart.
Chief Bearheart is a very good horse. The only thing is he's a 3-year-old. He's got plenty of time to develop. He's on his home course right now. I think of him as I think of Sky Classic, a horse who got better later on in life. He's doing well right now. He may do well. He's on his own home course, but I think you're going to hear a lot from this horse as he gets older.
And those from the Sheik's stables, we talk about Singspiel, but there really are 4 good horses there as well.
That's 4 for the price of 1. You can't argue with that. Any one of these horses has a shot to win. We've already seen what Singspiel could do because he came here. I personally like Swain because he comes from the barn of Andre Fabre, fabulous fob. But like I said, 4 for the price of 1. You can't beat it.
Well, lots more still to come here on Breeders' Cup 96 at the Post, including a little help for you bettors who need a hand deciding which horse gets your $2 come race day. But right after this, we'll look at the Classic and a rematch between the Great Cigar and Darren Go, the horse who ended Cigar's streak this summer. And still with the Classic, here's a look at Sky Classic.
And Sky Classic has a clear aim to him as they move toward the top of the stretch. Subotika's on the outside third. Darros is done, and Fraze moves into contention. Navarone turns for home in front with Sky Classic running by him. Sky Classic takes the lead, but Fraze is coming up the inside, and Quest for Fame is closing third. Sky Classic fully extended. Fraze on the inside, and Fraze knocks Sky Classic in the last stride. Beatable Cigar!
For most of the past 2 years, he has been incomparable to his peers, better compared to some of the finest thoroughbreds in history. It all seems so unlikely not long ago. Cigar was thought to be a turf horse, but he struggled as a 3-year-old and throughout most of his 4th year, winning only once on grass. Then, late in 1994, he changed surfaces. His jockey, Jerry Bailey, remembers the transition well.
I had ridden Cigar when he was in the midst of his grass run, when he was running on the grass versus running on the dirt, and he was ordinary at best. And the trainer, Bill Mott, tried a few different things, a few different jockeys, and I was lucky enough to get back on him once he started his dirt career. And that was back in October of 1994, and the rest is history.
Cigar won his final 2 races in 94, then went 10-0 in 95, capping off his perfect season with the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Eclipse Award as Horse of the Year. After winning his first 4 races of '96, Cigar had tied Citation's long-standing record of 16 straight wins, a streak that finally ended in August at the Pacific Classic.
I knew he was a good horse, but I really didn't have any idea he would do the things that he has come to do. 16 in a row, I had no idea he would accomplish anything like that.
Though he's the clear favorite to win the Classic again, Cigar, nursing a quarter crack in his right front hoof, has shown signs of vulnerability, beaten twice in his last 3 starts. But trainer Bill Mott believes he'll be fine for what could be his final showdown, which no doubt will be a sad parting for his trainer.
It's obviously a big loss. I mean, I've been, we think about those things all the time. I think he's given us a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy and given us a lot all the way through the 2-year campaign that the streak has lasted.
Yeah, the adjectives say a lot about Cigar. Inconquerable, invincible, unbeatable. That was the aura surrounding Cigar heading into last year's Classic, and he lived up to that billing. An undefeated season, Horse of the Year, and a place in racing history. But 2 losses in his last 3 races gives hope to 13 challengers. A full field of 14. Some fit, some don't. But the 13 of them who have never won the Classic have a common goal, a non-smoking section in the winner's circle. One of the challengers has butted out the Cigar once before. Dare and Go. The 5-year-old son of Aladar came from off the pace at Del Mar and ended Cigar's magical 16-race winning streak in August. With entry mate Atticus sure to set an honest pace, Dare and Go will try to repeat his come-from-behind win. 2 things may prevent that, though. 1, Cigar is less likely to get hooked up in a speed duel with Atticus than he did with the more dangerous Siphon back at Del Mar. And 2, Dare and Go races in California and may not like the cooler, damper surroundings up here. If there's a hot horse coming into the Classic, it may be '94 Molson Million winner Dramatic Gold. Since a jockey change that put Kent DeSormo on his back, Dramatic Gold has won back-to-back races, including the Grade 1 Meadowlands Cup last time out. Trainer David Hoffmans has kept both Dramatic Gold and his other Classic entrant, Alphabet Soup, in tip-top shape and feels he may have an edge on the defending champ.
Some of the horses, including Cigar, are had a hard year. My horses are kind of fresh. They've had a hard year at the end of a hard campaign, so maybe that's a little chink in Cigar's armor.
Do you think Lady Luck could have her say in the Classic? If so, you have to love Yanks music. The 3-year-old filly opted to try the boys rather than go for a smaller paycheck in the highly competitive Distaff. She has the credentials to back up her decision. 7 wins and 2 seconds in 9 starts, 4 Grade 1s, and back-to-back wins over the tough and classy Serena Song. Have speed, will travel. Will's Way has won at 3 different tracks this year, his best coming over Louis Quatorze and Skipaway in the Travers in August. Even though he was 7th, the D. Wayne Lucas's editor's note in the Super Derby, 3 horses have come off losses in Louisiana's top race in their last starts to win the Classic. 3 20-to-1 shots sit outside Dare and Go on the rail. Mutual Field horse Formal Goal, Japan's first ever Breeders' Cup starter Taiki Blizzard, and Canada's own Mount Sassafras.
When Skipaway decided not to come, it kind of made left our options open a little bit. Obviously, Cigar's the great horse, and it's going to be very tough to beat Cigar, and the other horses are all good horses in this race. But Mount Sassafras runs his race. He likes his race course. He likes the distance, and he's doing good. And, we're hoping for a big race from him.
Louis Quatorze hopes to handle the surface a little better than when he flopped in the Woodbine Million last month, while outsiders Mahogany Hall and Tamaez round out the Classic field. And Perry Skipaway, as we mentioned, won't be here, but Dare and Go is, and he was the first one to do the unthinkable. Think Lightning can strike twice at Woodbine?
I don't think it's going to happen twice. I mean, it happened there. It was sort of a home course advantage, if you will. He's a California horse. He had an entry mate set up a really rapid pace. I don't see that situation happening again, and I don't think Jerry Bailey, the jockey, will fall into the same trap that he perhaps did the first time.
Now, Cigar goes off at 4-5. If not Dare and Go, who else in the field has a shot at Cigar, do you think?
I'll throw a couple names at you. One is Yanks Music, a 3-year-old filly. 3-year-old fillies do well this time of the year. This horse was not entered in the Distaff where she could have done well, so she may have an outside shot. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say editor's note, because my editor of the greatest show on turf would say you have to mention that horse, and realistically, that horse does have a shot.
And you had to get another plug in for that book, didn't you? We'll have one last break in our Sports Desk special, a Breeders' Cup at the Post. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with Perry's picks for Saturday's Super Bowl of racing at Woodbine. We'll call it Perry's Super 7 when we return. It's calling for a temperature of 17 degrees with overcast skies. Good news for our friends in the U.S. media. NBC's John Veach was quoted as saying, "We might have our first white Breeders' Cup." Well, an article in the New York Post described the location of Woodbine as touching the rim of the Canadian tundra. Welcome back. Time to put the expert on the spot now as we ask Perry Lefko to pick the winners in all 7 races. First up, the juvenile fillies, Perry.
Minister's Melody, she's the horse that's on the improve.
I've been hearing a lot about Minister's Melody. How about the sprint?
I'm going with a bit of a fly here called Ictamel. Set a new course record at England last time out. First time Lasix worked really well at Woodbine. Take a flyer on him.
Bit of a gutsy call. How about the distaff for the fillies and mares?
No gutsy call here. Different, undefeated on the air. Bet everything you got on her.
The mile and turf, we've heard a lot about Mark of Esteem. What do you think?
Well, John McCurrick said it best. It's the favorite, and I'm not going to argue with John McCurrick. How do you argue with a guy like that?
The juvenile, you got Boston Harbor, you got Ordway. Who do you like?
I like Ordway. He showed a lot of guts last time out going through a hole. I really think this is a good horse.
And the turf, the mile and a half, and the E.P. Taylor course, and those European entries, Sheikh Mohammed.
You gotta love the Europeans. You get 4 for the price of 1 on the entry. Fabulous Fab and Swain, that's the one I prefer.
And finally, the $4 million classic. I wonder who you're going for.
I'm not gonna argue against Cigar because he is on the cover of the greatest show on turf.
Cigar it is. That's at least one. I do agree with you there. And it's interesting about Cigar, you know, if he doesn't win this race, will he still be remembered among the greats? I would think he would have to be.
Cigar's lost 2 of his last 3 races. Horses lose. This is a 6-year-old horses. They don't race forever. He will be remembered as the great horse that he is.
Well, it's just hours to post time now. We'd like to thank Perry Lefko for his insight into Saturday's 7 races, and thanks to you for watching as well. Good luck at the windows. Enjoy the races, everyone. Bye-bye.